like and subscribe right now, or this spider will crawl on your face when you are sleeping. The human body can seem incredibly fragile, but the truth is that paired with our powerful drive to survive and some help from nature, we aren't at all powerless in the face of a disaster. All of us must have heard some incredible and unbelievable stories where people managed to survive scenarios that logic can't quite explain. In this video, we will be looking at 5 people who endured situations we can't imagine surviving, even in our own worst nightmares. Stay tuned until number 1 to know about a cook who lived underwater for 3 days. Number 5. Plane Crash Survivor. If one of your worst nightmares is not being aboard a plane crashing in the dead of night in the middle of the ocean, come back when you've seen the movie Castaway, and we'll discuss it again. It's hard even to imagine a more terrifying experience, and very few live to tell about it, but one 14-year-old French girl did, when 152 others were not so lucky. Yemen Flight 626, an Airbus A310, plunged into the Indian Ocean around 2 in the morning of June 30th, 2009. Young Bahai Bakari was ejected from the plane, and despite having no life jacket and not being a very good swimmer, was able to stay afloat by clinging to a piece of debris from the plane's fuselage. She would later say that there must have initially been other survivors as she could hear their voices in the chaos after the crash, but that all the voices had eventually faded away. She realized she was alone as the sun rose, and it wasn't until around 11 in the morning, 9 hours after the crash, that she was discovered by a civilian vessel that had been enlisted to help search for survivors. If you think about it, Bakari spent more than 13 hours in the water clinging to wreckage before she was rescued. She was found suffering from hypothermia, a fractured collarbone, and bruising to her face, elbow, and foot. Bahia was the only one that the search effort would yield. Her mother was among the dead, but her father had not been aboard the plane. She was released from the hospital 3 weeks later. Her father, Kassim, met her as she arrived in France, saying he was relieved and overjoyed to see his daughter even as he mourned his wife. Just try to imagine being the only survivor in a group of 152 people. Those voices must haunt her even now. Bakari has to be one of the luckiest people to ever live. If this doesn't make you believe in a higher power, the next story definitely will. Number 4. Picked up by a tornado. You probably remember the grim summers of 2013 when a series of tornadoes rocked the central United States, and Oklahoma took the worst of it. Some 35 people died in May alone. One couple has quite the story to tell, though, as they survived the Shawnee tornado after it sucked them out of their SUV. Yes, you heard that right. One of these tornadoes, an E4 tornado, which is the second most powerful rating for a tornado, was sighted near the town of Shawnee by husband and wife Gary and Susan Whaley as they were heading home on the highway. The whole day for a blur for the couple, but investigations showed that while driving, the couple tried to pull under an overpass. That was a pretty bad idea because the structure of an underpass can amplify a tornado's winds. Unfortunately, the couple didn't know that. When the twister met them, it picks up their truck and sucking them both right out the windows. According to Susan, the next thing she remembered was waking up on the ground. However, she couldn't find her husband anywhere. When she looked around, she found him over 15.2 meters, 50 feet away, with about a dozen broken bones, but somehow still alive. Yes, Gary survived an E4 tornado after being sucked in. How often do you hear something like this? What's even crazier is their dog Rocky was also with them at the time and went missing afterward, until he was found 4 days later, trapped under some debris and also alive. However, the record for the longest distance survived by a person in a tornado is 398 meters, 1,307 feet, and was given to Matt Sutter. Number 3. Resurfaced after 18 years. At number 3, we have another record, but this one is way grimmer than the tornado one. Usually, when there's a kidnapping, the resurfacing time for the victim is not more than a month. After that, even the police stop looking. However, this kidnapping story is nothing ordinary. Some 22 years ago, J.C. Duggard, then an 11-year-old kid, went missing on June 10, 1991 in Myers, California, as she walked to the school bus stop when she was approached by a silver car and snatched from the street. The 11-year-old stepfather, Carl Probin, witnessed her kidnapping and could not catch up to the driver who lured JC into the car. The case haunted the family and the town for nearly 20 years until a fateful day in August 2009 brought JC back into the fold. During her 18-year life of hell, JC lived in a ramshackle backyard compound at her kidnapper Philip Garrido's home, which Duggard would later describe as a prison. She was sexually assaulted by her kidnapper and was forced to raise the 2 children she had with him. Garrido was a convicted sex offender who spent 11 years in prison before being released on parole in 1988. No kidnapped victim in modern American history had been found alive after being missing that long. Philip Garrido was arrested, and Nancy, his wife and co-conspirator, was taken into custody soon after. Today, Dugard and her nonprofit, the JC Foundation, help facilitate that same kind of family reunification for other trauma victims. Before we get into today's subscribers pick, we have a bonus entry that will leave you shocked for life. Buried alive. Michalina Lewandowski is not your average survivor. She came back from a place that is destined to be the last resort for any human. Michalina and her fiancé Marcin Kasparak got engaged in 2006, and they moved to England to start a life together. Once Michalina became pregnant in 2008, the relationship began to go south. Eventually, they decided to call off their engagement, but remained a couple, and Michalina continued to wear her engagement ring. On Saturday, May 28, 2011, Marcin asked Michalina to go shopping with him and his friend. She thought Marcin was showing interest, so she went to the bathroom to get changed. After she came out, Marcin pulled a 300,000-volt stun gun from his pocket, pressed it up against Michalina's neck, and tasered her. They gagged Michalina, tapped her, and put her inside a cardboard box. They later buried her, but Michalina was a smart woman. She realized she had something that could save her life, her diamond engagement ring. She cut herself loose and clawed her way back to the surface. Not only had she survived the unthinkable, but she used the very ring Marcin had given her to do so. Marcin later received the shock of his life when he was arrested and later sentenced to prison for 2.5 years. And now, let us move on to our subscriber pick of the day. This image was sent to us by a subscriber. Similarly, if you ever wish to know more about an image you come across, just send it to us. Who knows, we might even feature it in one of our videos. Number 2. Shark attack. Finding a shark while you're skinny dipping is everyone's worst nightmare. There's little room for escape. However, some have survived even the worst of shark attacks. One of them being 15-year-old Zach Golubiowski. Zach was enjoying a morning surf at a remote beach on Australia's south coast in December of 2006 when his life was irrevocably changed. A shark attack was the last thing Zach expected when he went into the water. He used the waves to go back to the beach, but after 3 or 4 waves, he got a bit of a dud. It didn't quite take him all the way into the beach. He started to paddle back out to where his brother was. The shark came in from deeper water and attacked his right leg as he was paddling. That pulled him under the water and then let go. He came straight back up and shouted for help. Golubiowski's survival was enabled by his brother and strangers' quick and decisive action on the beach. He ended up losing a leg to attack, but despite his trauma, the ocean continues to draw him in. No longer able to stand on a surfboard, he now uses a boogie board. Obsession has no limits. Number 1. Underwater for 3 days. How long can you hold your breath in water? I can't do it more than 3 minutes, and I think that's a lot. But what if I told you a guy who didn't know how to swim ended up living underwater for more than 72 hours? This is one of the most shocking tales of survival at sea ever told. Entombed at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean in an upended tugboat, all Harrison Ojegba Okene had was an ever-dwindling supply of oxygen in an air pocket and a lot of hope. What happened was that a boat was working in an oil field off the coast of Nigeria when rough seas proved too much and overturned it, sending it 100 feet to the bottom. While every other crew member perished, Okene found himself stranded in a washroom but alive, using the only pocket of air available to survive the flooding. But it wasn't all a blessing. Although he was alive, he was also cold, wet, in complete darkness, wearing nothing but his underwear for 3 days. And the smell! Understandably, rescuers had no reason to assume anyone was alive on the sunken ship. It wasn't until divers eventually visited the ship to recover the bodies that the remarkably not dead cook was found. Okene was taken to the surface in a pressurized diving bell, then confined for another 2 days in a decompression chamber. After that, he was released and advised never to go back into a small space ever again. Thank you very much for watching the video. Do like and share it with your friends. Also, let us know in the comments if you have survived any life-threatening situations. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to not miss any of the upcoming amazing videos. Thank you once again.